All right, let's not waste any time with me rambling. Let's get right into some data. Let's talk some PFF grades with Saquon Barkley, and then we're going to get into some film. And I have it up on the screen. What you see, these are his Pro Football Focus grades of the 4 years he's been in the league. And this is why I really think that this is an interesting video to make now, because we've seen something of Saquon Barkley that we had never seen before, which is a season where he got significant playing time and did not look that impressive, at least if you trust PFF grades. 2018, PFF grades loved his game, and then in 2019, he still had a solid season according to PFF grades, and that was with getting banged up, so there you go. But we definitely have seen a dip each of the past 2 seasons. Now, 2020, 67 snaps. I'm not going to hold that against him too much, but 514 snaps last year, which is still on the low end, and he still was battling through injuries, but it was not as impressive. So what's right? Is the PFF grade right, or is he still a dominant player who just needs an offensive line and needs to get on the field more? Well, let's start off with a play like this. Clearly, the offensive line has always been an issue. I'm going to pause it for a second just to set up this play, but that's a very important thing for a running back. You can only do so much. You're entirely dependent on your offensive line. So, yeah, if your offensive line looks better, you're going to look better. If your offensive line looks worse, you're going to look worse. Maybe there's a few exceptions. I think of like guys like Derrick Henry and Marshawn Lynch that seemingly are effective no matter what their offensive line is. But for the most part, you need a great offensive line to be successful, or at least a good offensive line to be successful. Barkley has not had that. Look at how right when this play begins, Barkley, who's running up the middle, I mean, where is he going to run? This is one of those plays where, I mean, if I'm a PFF grader, I kind of grade it as like a nothing play. It wasn't a good or bad play, but this can still, hurt that data, even though, yes, that data does factor in, what happened. And in fact, they might grade this as a good play. I don't really know exactly how those little details work. But what I do know is that this is going to, give you less opportunities to be special when this is the gap you're trying to run through. Barkley still does the right thing, puts his head down, doesn't take much of a loss there, but that's just kind of how things can become issues for the Giants and how things can become issues for Saquon Barkley himself, and why his numbers can look poor and why his, even advanced statistics can look poor. And we have seen some flashes of Barkley still being Saquon Barkley, something like this, where it's going to be just a little pitch to him, little pass out to him where he's going to run out to the flat. Pretty simple, but watch what happens. Daniel Jones takes the snap, again, just flips it over to Barkley, and you see Broncos defensive lineman is reading this play and trying to get over to make a tackle. But look at how Barkley is going to be able to make that move, and he gets by him. So, hey, still has some of the footwork, still has some of the shiftiness. So that's promising, right? Because as long as we can see the flashes, as long as we can see the upside that we saw, that I think to me tells me he at least still has it. And maybe it was just he wasn't fully healthy last year, more so than he's just completely lost it. Because again, running backs can fall off a cliff quickly. Running backs aren't always a position that, slowly declines, and you don't always get 6 years out of a running back, even though that's what you hope to get when you draft one. Like this play's another play of just one of those Saquon Barkley highlight reel level plays. So again, just to set it up, a big thing about Saquon Barkley, what is he known for? These plays that are maybe not necessarily going for a ton of yards, but are incredibly impressive, that he was able to get the yardage he got with the situation he was given. And look, as you see, so Barkley takes the snap right here. He's going to try to get to a gap to the right, but there was nothing else really open, ends up running into his own tight end. But then watch what he's able to do from this point on. Watch him sidestep one and then sidestep a second Bears player, and is able to burst up with acceleration to get about 8 yards on that play. So again, in the grand scheme of things, 8 yards, that's not helping your statistics too much. But when you watch that play, you say, wow, I mean, you just turned probably a tackle for a loss into 8 yards. And those are the plays that in the course of a football game really help you. Although one issue I think I've found watching Barkley's tape this past year is I feel like there's a lot of times when guys are just prepared for him and are not letting him get to the outside. They're making sure they keep containment. And watch this actually defensive tackle who's going to do, I think, an interesting job here. So again, a little bit weird because there's there's also a tackle blocking an edge rusher. So this isn't the contained situation, but still, it's going to illustrate my point because watch what happens. Right when this play begins, you notice how at this point you see him kind of start to get to the right side of the screen, start to get closer towards the middle of the field, which now Barkley sees, okay, well, Andrew Thomas is doing a great job blocking on that edge. There's a little gap right here. Let me try to run through it. However, by the time it takes him to get over there, then you have the defensive tackle able to reach out and make a tackle. Barkley got a couple yards, but not as much as maybe it looked like it could have been for a second, and it seemed like guys were very prepared for Barkley to get to the outside. They were very prepared for this kind of stuff. I think this one's probably a better example of what I'm talking about because this is actually a containment play where it's going to be the, again, left tackle going up against an edge rusher one-on-one. And notice how right when this play begins, okay, so the edge rusher goes to the inside, makes an inside move, which now Barkley says, okay, let me bounce things to the outside, try to get into his position where I can gain a ton of yards. These are how some of his explosive plays, worked, especially in college, but especially in the NFL, especially, his rookie year. I said especially a lot there, but let's move on. When Barkley tries to get to the outside, there's just the containment guy is aware of it and just kind of knows, hey, don't let him get you to the outside. If you find yourself closer to the inside, make an effort to make sure you get back to the outside and don't give up containment on Barkley. That's kind of the main thing you can't do. You can't do it against any running back, but especially Barkley because he likes to go to the outside so frequently, and it wasn't as effective because guys were just prepared for it. Like something like this is another good example where it's going to be Von Miller now, who's the edge rusher, and he's going to kind of do this perfectly. Look at how right when this play begins, again, all he's focused on right here is containment. If Barkley runs up the middle, he's going to trust that his front, the rest of his front seven can make a tackle and that the Giants' interior offensive line isn't going to be able to run block well enough to get things through. All he cares about is containment, which is what he should be doing. That's his job. So Barkley does try to get to the outside, and Miller is there to not allow a ton of yards. Again, Barkley did actually a really good job on that play. To me, that's still a positive play from Barkley. He got the most yardage he could have out of that situation, but it's not like a touchdown like it might have been had Von Miller not been paying as much attention to containment simply because of, the fact that Von Miller was paying so much, attention to containment. So yeah, at the end of the day with Barkley, the reality is this is just kind of a blanket statement more than a Barkley specific statement that if you're going to ask me, hey, does this running back with injury issues, is he someone to reliably place a bet on? I'm just always going to say no to that question. That's just kind of my general thought on the matter. And again, I'm not a fantasy football guy. I care about real football, right? And that's what I'm interested in. And I just think that there's just too big of a risk factor there with Barkley, I think. Not like, again, who knows what can happen. Adrian Peterson was successful. There is always a question mark, but if you put a gun to my head and say you have to bet on either Barkley being amazing next year or not being amazing next year, I'm probably going to bet on not amazing, which is unfortunate because when he is amazing, he looks great. The one thing I would say though is that if the interior offensive line plays better, doesn't have to be perfect. If it plays better this year, maybe you could start to see him sort of when guys do pay attention to, protecting the edge, he can get up the middle and actually do some stuff that way in more traditional running plays. Because if he can do that, I think he could still be a good running back, even if he's not what the Giants thought they were getting when they drafted him second overall. But yeah, that's what I think. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. Always love hearing from you. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.